What's going on? This is going to be an open chat. Just going to talk about whatever. Had a busy fucking day today. This is the Dominance Academy. I'm your professor for the evening, Mr. Justin. Yep. It's fucking snowing again in New York City. God damn it. I really, really want the snow to go away so I can ride. Snow go away so Daddy can ride. Speaking of Daddy, boy, this I think that the whole BDSM thing, or at least a semblance of such, is becoming more and more and more mainstream. Or perhaps more girls are just opening up to the idea. Because, excuse me. Because, I'm just seeing just more and more girls on X, on dating apps, social media, that are just at least playing around with the idea of calling a man daddy, And to be fair, there is a big difference between a woman calling you daddy and her actually feeling it, right? There's a big difference between calling you daddy and her really feeling it, right? And it's like, well, what does that even mean, right? Like, what does that even mean to have a woman feel like she's calling you daddy? Feeling it in her gut, in her bones, in her soul, right? In her loins. And it has a lot to do with trust, right? That she can trust that she can lean into you emotionally, right? That's really where it's at. And sure, it takes on this playful form of daddy, but there is some truth to it, because inside every woman, no matter how old she is, lies a little girl. There's a little girl in there. Oh my gosh, man! I just started going back into the gym, and my neck and my back, they're on fire. Incredibly sore, but at least it's the good kind of sore. It's not like when something's fucked up kind of sore. But anyways, so when a woman really feeling like that she can call you daddy is it's a big deal for her, if she really feels it, if she really feels that shit. And I remember, where did I see this? God, I can't remember where I saw it, but the guy was like, he was asking, he's like, well, can't she be just kind of pretending, right? Like, she can just put on a submissive mask. And yeah, that's true. She absolutely can. And there's two ways that you can go about handling that. Oh, three. One, you can just play along with the charade. Like, it's like, okay, I know you're playing a role and I'm playing a little role, and we're both just kind of playing around, right? And I know you're faking, and I'll fake as well, like that sort of shit. But really, so that's one choice, right? And you just go along with it, right? The other choice is that you're going to put in some work, and you break her, right? That is certainly one way. Like, basically, you're but you have to be an extremely, extremely clever guy. And you probably have to be on the spectrum of sociopathology in order to do this to somebody. Because basically, you have to break down their psychology to the point where they're actually feeling this submission. And I know some guys, they might fantasize about doing this sort of thing or think that they have it in them. But I really don't think that many guys have it in them. I don't think they do at all. Because you really have to have your goal in mind and not really be concerned about how the other person feels or what they're experiencing. Just about the process. And because you're results oriented, that's all you want. So yeah, you could go along with the charade, or you can go to an extreme. If this girl's playing along, you're like, all right, you want to play? I will break you. Kind of like in Rocky 4, when Ivan Drago is looking at Rocky before they fight, and he's like, I must break you. So, yeah, you got to look at it in that way. And, your compassion levels have to be very low, which I believe sociopaths have. I think they have, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they do have a very low level of compassion. And that is certainly a way to break them down. And then another way is just through understanding, right? And that is the longest process, because basically it's kind of like you're bringing someone to a religion. Okay, so imagine you're just totally sunk into a religion. You're a devout follower of said religion, and you know the benefits of this coming from, say, like an emotional and psychological standpoint. Okay, not getting into the spiritual aspects, but just emotionally and psychologically, like what this brings you. And you're trying to convince another person to say, hey, just try coming over into my neighborhood and give it a go. All right. Because you know of the effects, you know the positive effects of being this as involved as you are. And again, like that's going to take a fair bit of trust and willingness on their part. Okay. It also means that you have to know what the hell you're doing, right? Not just believe, but you have to know, because they might have questions. All right. And they're going to have to trust that you know the way. All right. And so it can be kind of like that, where you're inviting them into a territory, a place that is completely unfamiliar to them. Right. And, people might think that they're familiar with this sort of thing because they've seen BDSM in porn. Maybe they watched a couple of movies. Maybe they've even read some books. But to my knowledge, nothing has really come close to understanding what goes on. And I'm not a religious person, but I've talked with many religious people over the years, really, really serious people. And it's my understanding that you can't really put the experience into words. And any attempt to put it into words is a bit of a failure. I know this is the case with the Tao because they talk about it directly. They're like, you can't even talk about the Tao. In any attempt to talk about the Tao, you fail automatically. But you know it and you can feel it and you understand it, but it's just beyond words. And I think that's sort of the way with some religious experiences or some spiritual experiences. And I know this is the case somewhat with the development that occurs through living BDSM. And I guess the closest thing I could say is that it's close to a religious experience, because you're choosing a certain pathway with a certain structure, a certain way to relate to yourself and others that is somewhat transcendent. I wouldn't say it's transcendent on, say, a spiritual level, but it's transcendent on a psychological level for sure. It brings you into a different headspace, and that is like full of vulnerability. And to take someone who doesn't know anything really about that into that world and say, okay, I'm gonna entrust you with my mind. I'm gonna entrust you with my emotions, which is going to change my perceptions. It's going to change my beliefs. It's going to change how I relate with myself. I'm going to be putting myself in your hands for guidance and assurance, right? That you're not going to lead me down a pathway of destruction. That's a lot. That's quite a bit, you know? From my understanding so far, while it does very much have to do with bondage, sadism, masochism, domination, and submission, very much, right? That surface stuff, it goes beyond that. And there's things that occur that are extremely difficult to talk about, but they're real. It's a real experience. You get to, as a dom, you get to experience yourself in a completely different. It's like a different context of yourself. It's really strange. But I can tell you, if done properly, it's all for the best, right? And this is why I harp on you guys so much about having control over your sexual impulses, right? Having control of your sexual impulses, because that keeps you locked into the physical, right? And that's fine and all, right? But it has its limitations, right? It has its limitations of what it can do for you on a deeper level, okay? Like, you're not going to find out who you are through physicality, right? You're going to find out what you like. You're going to find out what you don't like. You're gonna discover things about other people, but you're not really going to discover yourself through physical means, right? It's sort of like what happens internally, right? But if your mind is only just on the physical, then you're never going to move past it, right? So this is why, one of the reasons why I make sure that you guys understand that it's important to control your urges, I mean, for obvious reasons. The other ones are that so no one has power over you, all right? Because if you're entranced by vagina, if you're entranced by orgasms, for whatever reason, right? The motivation for wanting to be entranced, right? Which is strange, right? Like, I want to be entranced. That's a weird motivation, isn't it? But it's to have that over you, I find that personally a little disturbing. Like, how can you feel strong if you know you have this great weakness, right? If you're just like this rock star in the world, okay, but a pretty woman walks by, and now all sorts of thoughts start going through your head. Your heart is racing, your pupils dilate, you start thinking all sorts of weird shit. Applicable things, but to me, I would call it weird shit. And now your actions are shifting. It's like, well, what? Like, maybe you're asking what you should do, or I must go talk to this person, right? I feel compelled. I don't like the idea of being compelled by anything. That it does not sit right with me in any respect, not just women and sexuality, but to be compelled to do anything, that does not sit right. Like, how can I lead? How can I be influential, right? If I am easily compelled by just a pretty woman, right? I mean, it's almost like someone with a gambling problem not being able to walk past one of those like off-track betting places, you know, with the TV monitors, and they can bet on like horses and dog racing and, you know, F1 or whatever it is that they do. And they can't walk past one. They're just compelled to walk in, right? Addiction's a weird thing. It really, really is. And I remember reading some time ago that I think there's some people who are genetically predisposed to addiction. And man, for those that have this with regard to pussy, but, you know, because if you've got an addicted personality, it doesn't mean that you're addicted to everything, right? You know, like an alcoholic isn't going to get addicted to gambling necessarily. So, but the root structure is there, right? So, but I do recall reading an article saying that there is a gene that has you addicted to shit. But you know, I feel bad for the guys who are addicted to women, right? Or addicted to pussy. Like that's tough. It's real tough. Because if it's like card playing, that's one thing. It's an inanimate object. Okay, if it's alcohol or drugs or porn, you know, or even exercise, right? These are inanimate things. Okay, but to be addicted to a whole other person, that's crazy, because as addictions are, it's this thing outside of you that has control of your behaviors, and it's like shit. Like that's some heavy shit. If another person has control of your behaviors, I wouldn't want to be in that person's shoes. Like, I don't like the idea of something having control over me. It's I don't know. I've got a friend who is he's a dom, and he's become quite experienced, especially in the psychological games and the physical games. But he just has this insatiable urge to fuck. Like, he just loves just getting in there and fucking a woman's mind and fucking her body and making her beg. And like, he's sent me messages of like the girls he's with, and they're just like, "Daddy, I need you to come home so you can break me. I need to be broken." And like, they have their own terminology. Like, I know what that means. But basically, she wants to be used. She wants to be, you know, in his way, right? And he can't get enough. He cannot get enough of it. And especially when, you know, especially when it comes to the girls that he chooses, which are, you know, party girls, right? These party girls, you know, good looking. Their brains are, you know, they're not calm, intelligent women. These are party girls, you know. They like to do drugs, they like to drink, they like to dance all night, they like to fuck, they like to get themselves into trouble. Drama usually follows them in a wake. And this is, you know, these are the girls that he likes. But I can understand it, because that kind of mind is very, very easy to tap into. Very easy. You know, these party girls, they're many times like quite damaged. Okay, and the truth of the matter is that when there is damage, it's really easy to get into that mind. Okay, someone, you know, a woman who's more grounded, who is healed, or who doesn't have much trauma in their life, it's a lot more difficult to get into their head, you know, for good reason. But there's less cracks, you know. But if there's all kinds of cracks in their wall, and you could just slip in there, right? Very, very easily. And if you are creative and you know what you're doing, it can absolutely be quite a lot of fun, all right, for both parties. The problem is that you're stuck with this crazy person. And at first you're going to be like, yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Like, or you get involved, you're like, man, this is awesome. Like, she just can't get enough of my dick. She can't get enough of serving me in any way that I could possibly dream of. But then some time goes by and the crazy comes out, right? I don't know if you guys saw, what was that? What's it called? Baby Girl. Right, I did a review on Baby Girl, and there's a scene in it, like after the two had gotten, wrapped in together doing their shit. They were at this house party, and the guy, the Dom, he arrived with another girl, and the lead character, the lead female character, she was like, "Are you like? Is she with you? Are you with her?" And she like started losing her fucking mind. And she's like, no, you're mine. And she's like jumping on him and like, like a little kid, like who felt like she was being replaced or something like that. Like daddy was replacing her. And she flipped her fucking lid. All right. And seriously, like that's how it can be with, and even worse. I mean, this is the, the horror stories, like the car being keyed up, stalking, all kinds of shit, restraining orders. But it's like that, like the crazy hot Matrix, right? So yeah. Hey, what's up, Jacob? I was addicted to self-help material, trying to find some magic fix for myself for a long time. Yeah, dude. And you realize that you've been sitting with the fix the entire time. It's just you. That's the funny part. That's the irony. That's the irony of the game. One of the many, many ironies of the game is that, a lot of guys go through that, Jacob. A lot of guys go through just thinking that, like, if my problems and shit, like, I don't like this, I don't like that. There's got to be some book out there that's going to solve it for me. Some book is going to have the answer, and I read this book and boom, I'm going to be fixed. Or some video on YouTube that's going to have the answers for me, right? Or even a coach, right? Oh, this coach, he's got the answers, right? But the good teachers, and I learned this by having good teachers, is that they turn you more so towards yourself. They give you tools so that you can turn towards yourself and develop that relationship. And that's where the answers to all of your problems are, right? We are the progenitors of the vast majority of our own suffering. And very little of it comes from the outside world. Okay. And it's actually 100% if you look at it from a perspective of how you process your emotions with respect to whatever stimuli is happening outside of you, right? This is, because like you could lose your job, right? And you're like, oh man, lost my fucking job. And someone could lose their fucking mind and go drive into a brick wall, or they could say, wow, that sucks. Okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to find another job. So the stimuli is the same, but how it's processed and how you suffer or not is entirely how you go about processing that. Yeah. So, but yeah, a lot of the answers, Lucario says the truth is inside you. But the thing is, and this is where the conundrum lies, right? Shout out to Alan Watts. It's like touching the tip of your finger. Whoops, there it is. Touching the tip of your finger with the very same finger, right? Or trying to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, because the examiner is the examined at the same time. And that's when it gets a little weird, right? Which is why it's helpful to have a guide, right? Because guides can see you from angles that you can't see yourself. And that's why it's beneficial to have mentors, teachers, coaches, and things like that in your life. I've had so many, so many. My favorite, I guess, well, I don't know. It's hard to say, but Daniel Hammond. He was my shifu when I lived in a Shaolin temple, and he was just amazing. He was this amazing guy. He was like, I don't know, 5'5", and he was half black, half Chinese. Had such a strange look to him. Like you're like, I can't place you. Like where in the world you belong. And he had like this golden skin. His eyes were the color of gold. They were golden colored. He had the Q haircut, like you see in the old like Shaw Brothers kung fu movies, where they shave the front of their head and then they grow all the hair out the back. That's what he had, and it was like in this kind of like this golden brown ponytail. Monstrous fucking hands. He was just like ripped muscle from head to toe. He was like a skinned tiger, and his hands were massive. So just to give you an idea, like if you look at your thumb, all right, that was the thickness of his pinky. Like his pinkies were the size of my thumb. Like here's my pinky and here's my thumb. Okay. His pinky was the size of my thumb. Right. And so the rest of his fingers were fucking massive. And he was so good. Such an agile man. Amazing reaction and grace. So I don't know. It's just hard to describe. And yeah, he was a great guy. I mean, he's still alive, so I can't say was, but he's a great guy. And he had the ability to just teach through humor. So he'd like show you your ego while making you laugh at the same time. Like you didn't feel bad about seeing yourself. It was an amazing talent. I have no idea how he did it, but it's probably because he just had a golden heart. Like there was no anger in this guy at all. Nothing. I don't think I've heard him raise his voice, like when his daughter was like running around and he had to like catch her attention or something like that. And you're like, Mina, we're training. Stop scampering around. So it's just like this little one. But yeah. And we would just train and train and train like fucking all day long. We'd take breaks here and there to like just talk a little and maybe eat something. But just training constantly, nonstop. It was our work and it was our play. So we're like, I'm feeling kind of bored, because we didn't have TV or anything like that in the temple. We just had music. And so we're like, oh yeah, hey, there's like a this board of wood, behind the building. Let's go get that. And, set it up and drew a target on there. And we just for fun, because we were bored, we started throwing knives and dirks, and a dirk, if you're not familiar, is like it's like a metal, it's like a pen, right? It's just a shaft with a point on the tip of it. It's a weapon from ninjutsu. And I don't know how effective it is as an actual weapon, but probably used as like a distraction type of weapon, much like the throwing stars. Okay, it's like you're not going to kill somebody with a fucking throwing star, but you throw it and it causes them to react, or perhaps you'll scratch their eye or something. But the dirk, you kind of hold it like this in your hand, okay, and you can throw it like overhand, so your hand kind of flicks it out this way. Or backhand or underhand. And it doesn't flip through the air. It just actually slides out your hand like so. And knives, you flip this so they spin through the air. Dirks don't. And so we would just do that as fun. Like I remember we had this other thing, we were bored, and we had these bricks, okay, and they were about maybe, I don't know, 2.5 inches thick. And they were hexagonal shaped. All right. So they had 6 sides and we had tons of them. So we decided to set up 2 piles right nearby, and we would do handstands. All right. We were doing handstands, and we had to take a brick from one pile and put it on the floor near our hand, and a brick from the other pile and put it on the floor near our hand, and then step our hands up onto that. So now we're 3 inches up off the ground. Then from that handstand position, we take another brick. And then, so the idea was is to see how many bricks we can get up before we lost our balance. And it's kind of fucking challenging because the higher you got, you had to kind of bring yourself down into like a handstand press to reach the bricks that are now on the floor. You know, it's like this shit that we do, you know, like, hey, bored, let's do fucking handstands with bricks. Really, really fucking cool time in my life. I think like any, you know, young man, they should do something like that at some point in their lives. You know, I guess the easiest would be, say, like the military. You know, where you just basically you're in this you know, very like sequestered environment where it's just very physically demanding, and you're doing all kinds of weird shit that's out of the norm of what you do. You know what I mean? They're crawling through mud with their fucking machine gun and shit, and running up walls, and, you know, rappelling down with rope and all this stuff, like just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I think that sort of thing is really, really good for you. Doing physical things that feel like they're, I don't know, like they're real. You know what I mean? It's not just like going to the gym and just going like, like you're never going to do this in life. You know what I'm saying? Like, when's the last time you're just going to squat something, you know? But you might come across a wall that you have to fucking climb up without a rope, and you got to figure out how to do that. And the wall's like fucking 9 feet high. Like, you got to figure it out. So, but, yeah, we used to do runs, you know, sort of like a parkour-ish type of run. You know, and we were doing this shit like all in our kung fu shit. So we had like orange or gray robes, you know, with the long white socks with the black wrapping around them and beads and shit. And we just go like running, right? And with those terrible thin canvas Chinese shoes, slippers. That's what we trained in. And we would go, there was a park nearby, and we would go running through the park. We'd just like go vaulting off of stuff, launching over things, diving over. There's like boulders and stuff. We'd dive and roll over those. And this one day we were doing some like finger conditioning drills. Okay. Because Danny, when he went to the Shaolin Temple in China, the famous one there, they taught him the Eagle Claw method. And the Eagle Claw is very much focused on developing extremely strong hands and conditioned fingertips for the sake of like being able to like rip flesh from the body. Okay. And we're in the park there, and we're doing these like these strikes where you're kind of like doing this circular movement that's straight ahead like this. Okay. And on trees. Right, so we're just hitting it lightly, because if you go too hard, you're going to injure yourself, and you know then the training has to stop. So you have to do it at a certain pressure, such that you're hitting your fingers enough to condition the tips of them without damaging them. Okay, so it can't be too light, can't be too hard. And I'm doing my thing, right? And I look over at Danny, and he's straight up destroying this tree with his bare fingertips. Like it was almost like he had like a handful of like little axes or something. Chips of wood flying off of this fucking tree. Bark is going all over the place, and he's eating into the meat of the tree itself. I don't know how much pressure that's got to require. I've never seen something that crazy in my life. And I'm thinking to myself, like, he could just rip somebody's face right off their skull, just like a polar bear. And just go whoop, and it's gone. One swipe and your face is off. but then he's like the nicest, most cheerful, most loving, generous guy I've ever met in my entire life. He would give you the clothes off of his back if you needed them. He would not care. He'd just walk around naked as long as you were comfortable. That's the kind of man he was. You know, but you fuck with his family and you're all dead. Like all of your bones are dislocated. Everything. So, yeah. Yeah, he was a great guy. Yeah. I remember like when I don't know if you guys saw, what's it called? Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. You remember the mystical Tai Chi sword, right? And it has a very particular way of being used. Like you don't like hack and slash with a Tai Chi sword because the blade is extremely thin and really, really flexible, right? And so part of the art of it was being able to do certain strikes such that when you extended the hands, the blade curved in the air and it almost created like a whipping motion such that the tip would cause cuts from the whipping motion, right? Is very, very interesting style. But anyways, that's the Tai Chi sword. So he had a couple of Tai Chi swords and we would practice with them. He had live ones and he had ones that were not sharp. And like occasionally, you know, he was in a frisky mood and his vice was alcohol. He liked to drink. Okay. And so on the subject of addiction, but I don't think he was addicted. He just, you know, every once in a while he liked to drink. And so he had this bottle of Chinese plum wine in the refrigerator. He's like, come on, Justin, let's go drink, you know? And it was late, like all the students were gone and, you know, just a few of us residents were there. And so we went into the big open like combat room and we were just drinking and listening to James Brown because that was his favorite music of all time is James Brown. He played drums too. He was a drummer for a funk band. So sometimes you're like, okay, shutting down the school. I'm going to go play a gig at some bar, drums like in a funk band. But anyways, so we're drinking plum wine and just talking. He's telling me stories and making me laugh and shit. And it like the type of shit you're laughing so hard no sound comes out and like tears are streaming down your face. Like he's the guy that would do that to you, you know? I swear it was like mind control. Like he could control you through laughter. He's like, oh, watch, I'll make this guy my puppet. I'll control him and just make him laugh, you know? But anyways, so we're drinking and telling stories and shit, laughing, yucking it up. He's like, all right, Justin, like, go grab the swords off the wall. And I go to the Tai Chi swords. He's like, no, those ones, the live ones. Great. So we're fucking drunk on Chinese plum wine and doing like, you know, practice combat with live swords. And but I had full trust in him that he was so fucking good. Even when drunk, I would not be cut. He wasn't going to cut me, and I definitely wasn't going to cut him. He's just too graceful, too agile, too fast. Wasn't going to happen. So everything of mine was parried. But yeah, that was a good fucking time of life, man. If you have a chance to, you know, study with I don't know, somebody who knows Kung Fu, who also knows a little bit about Buddhism, I would highly recommend it. You know, not for the sake of like self-defense or anything like that, but just, I don't know, just learning yourself. You know, because that's what it all comes down to. You know, and, you know, all these, you know, guys talk about it, like Miles talks about it, Steve talks about it, Lucario talks about it, you know, Zagan talks about it, 50. It's all about self-knowledge at the end of the day, right? And the funny thing is that it can be had through just about anything. And I learned this when I was studying Buddhism, because they would say, well, you know, you can achieve a meditative state doing just about anything, right? Unless it's something that requires like a great deal of concentration and, you know, you don't want to fuck up. But even then, but you can achieve it through washing the dishes. Like it doesn't have to happen through like some ritualistic meditation pose with like chanting and incense and robes and all this shit. Like you can literally have these awakenings with yourself while taking a walk. Okay. And I realized this while I was training in Kung Fu, because you can't really think while you're doing it, right? Because when you start thinking, that's when you become disconnected with your body, and then, I don't know, it just fucks up. You get separated from what's happening. And while you're not thinking, your mind and body are all just together. Everything's kind of moving together. And it's almost like you and the environment and what you're doing, and even like if you're, sparring with somebody or even in combat with somebody, it's everything's one, everything's all together. And you realize that you're not thinking. And well, when that happens, it breaks the spell. But I realize that this can happen like through just about anything. Anything you do can create a line like that, a conversation line, a telephone line to yourself. Anything. And it's the same shit with this, game stuff, right? Because it's about that conversation, right? The trick is not letting yourself get fooled, right? Like blowing smoke up in your own ass too much. Because truth be told, a little bit does have to do with blowing smoke up your own ass. It is. But it's a tactic, right? This is something I tell my clients. I'm like, okay, so all that bullshit that you've been telling yourself about, what a loser you are, or how you're not good enough, or whatever, just all that negative self-speak. I asked them, is that objectively true? And 10 out of 10, they're like, no, but they believe it. Okay. And that's just because it's been propagated for so many years, right, throughout their lives. And they've just come to internalize this, and now it becomes a subjective truth, but it's not an objective truth. Okay. So I'm like, well, if that's just smoke that has been blown up your ass for so many times, so many years that it's become calcified, well, then you can do the same thing otherwise. You can do the opposite, right? There's no difference. It's just thoughts. It just so happens that these other thoughts that I'm talking about are better for you, right? They can produce a better effect, right? And so yeah, you basically have to have that repeated ability to tell yourself that you're better, right? That you're better than what you think you are, right? Because you are, but you don't believe it. So you kind of have to like overstep and really like believe that basically sunshine comes out of your fucking ass. And then you'll sort of come to a place where you feel like this, right? And it's like that whole thing with, what do they say? Like if you want to land on the moon, shoot for the stars, right? That sort of thing. And it's true. So like there's been studies done where businesses have set up initial goals, right? Like annual or like quarterly revenue goals, and they overshoot. Okay. And so like say they're like, okay, this year we want to clear like 500,000. All right. Well, or they need to clear 500,000. Then what they do is they say, okay, we're going to shoot for 800,000. Right. And then they're more likely to land at 500,000 or 600,000. So this is the same sort of tricks that you do with yourself, right? So if you overshoot with the confidence and the belief in yourself, where you actually land will be something that's actually normal, right? I hope that makes sense. And the reason why you have to overshoot is because it has to compensate for the amount of negative bullshit smoke that's calcified on your soul, right? That you've come to believe to be true, but it's not actually true. Yeah. And that this is like with a lot of shit, like a lot of stuff. You like there's so many contexts where this is the truth, where you have to overshoot in order to land where you ought to be. Okay? And you ought to be in a healthy place. Right? Like, understand, it's not normal to talk shit about yourself. That's not normal. It's just become normalized. But this is not normal. Okay? Just because everybody does it. Like, yeah, but you just have to stop drinking from the poison well. What's that story? There was a story like that where someone they wanted to like disrupt a kingdom or something like that. And so what they did is they snuck into the village, and instead of trying to overthrow the king, I think they poisoned the well. and the people in the town, in the village, they were drinking the water from the well, and it was like some like hallucinogen or something like that, and it made them all turn against the king. All right, and he didn't see or understand what they were seeing and understanding because he wasn't drinking from the well. It's some story along those lines, but basically, like, he wasn't drinking the water, so he didn't think this way. Okay, and it's the same idea. Like, you gotta like stop drinking you just got to stop drinking the poison. What's this? A is question. I glimpse into your new hypnotic program. That's not a question. Perhaps you're saying, can I glimpse into your new hypnotic program? Oh, so you're wondering like what's in it? Is that the question? Like what's in, or the Trojan horse? Perhaps. Yeah, the hypnosis program. Yeah, it's a collection. All right. So what I did is, it's a collection of real voices and AI voices that sounds very real, going through scripts made for submissives. Okay. Included, there's about 15 of them, and included are two short stories that I wrote, and one of them is done with an AI female voice, and the other one's done with an AI male voice. The voices are practically indistinguishable from human voices. It's amazing. Check out this website called 11. Yeah, I think it's 11 Labs. Yes, 11labs.io. Play around with that shit. You could do like text to speech. It's amazing. This shit is absolutely amazing. Maybe I can put it in the chat. Yeah. But yeah, so I've got a number of those, and they take the listener through through all the phases of hypnosis, and it's, I don't know, it's really good. Really like them. I mean, if you're into hypnosis, you're gonna like them. And the way hypnosis works is that it only works if the recipient believes that it will. Like, that's how hypnosis works. If they're really resistant and they're like, nah, hypnosis is bullshit, it can't do anything for me, or if they're very concerned about it, then it's not going to work. Right? It requires a willing mind. Okay. So, but yeah, it's very good, and it sets up triggers to the point where, well, you can set up triggers for. There's a bell trigger. So like just a little ding sort of bell, and that can set off a whole number of different anchors. It could set off the desire to suck dick. It can set off pussy getting wet, desire to fuck, a desire to get on the knees, all sorts of stuff. There's clicker training, right? So it's basically like the same sort of operant conditioning that you would use, or classical conditioning that you would use with another person, but it's just put into a format of hypnosis. And it's got theta waves in the background. So thetas are their wavelengths that cause the mind to relax. Okay. So that's like in the background. And then there's layers of voices on top. So some of them have just like one straight voice, and then others have a voice, but then underneath that layer is like, less volume, or like whispered voices, and they're kind of like popping off different phrases, saying like, I'm a good girl, being a good girl makes me horny, being horny makes me want to suck dick, when I suck dick I feel like a good girl, and like these like cyclical logics, kind of like dancing in the background that the subconscious hears, but the conscious mind is only hearing like the louder voice giving the commands to relax, and follow the voice and the breathing and, feeling like a good girl and, all this stuff kind of like bringing further and further into induction. And, all the while there's upfront conscious suggestions put in there as well as the subconscious suggestions put in there. So I like them. They're quite good. So if you're interested in that sort of shit, you can get in touch with me. We can talk about it. I can perhaps provide you a sample, right? I can provide you a sample if you just have no idea what I'm talking about. And, maybe I'll do that on the website. Maybe I'll just like grab a clip and just have a sample, maybe of just like a minute for the person to listen to, and then they'll have an idea. That's a good idea. That's what I can do. But yeah, the mind is a lot of fun. It's very, very interesting. Would you have her play it during next masturbation? No, it's a sort of thing. So the idea is to, all right, if you're familiar with how conditioning works, is you want to take a stimuli that has a known reaction and pair it with a different stimuli and have the same reaction. Okay, so the classic example is Pavlov's dog, right? So the dog hears a bell, and then the food drops out. Okay, hears a bell, and it's a little treat, and it's like a treat the dog fucking loves, right? So the bell, and then the treat, and the bell, and then the treat, bell, and the treat, and then eventually it's just the bell and no treat, and then the dog starts drooling. Okay, with the anticipation of the treat, but there's no treat, and then bell, drool. So he's getting a stimuli that typically comes from food, but now it's coming from a fucking bell, right? So, and they remove that. So they removed the food, and now there's a connection there. Now there's been a trigger created between a bell and drool, okay, with the anticipation of eating something tasty. All right. So that's the idea. So when doing this sort of thing, there is no masturbation, right? Because you want pleasure to come from not the physical touch, but from the commands, from the feelings, from the triggers, okay? And from being in the mental state of hypnosis, okay? So it could be, instead of drool, it's like her pussy's getting wet every time she hears a certain word. Her pussy's getting wet after hearing a certain sound, like a bell or a dog clicker or something, okay? A finger snapping, right? That's pretty common in hypnosis, right? So, and the idea is that, she's going to be into it as well, right? We don't want to do this non-consensually. She's got to be into it, which actually makes it even easier and stronger when the woman is very much into the idea of being turned on without actually being touched physically, okay? And so, so the idea is that you can be in, say, like a non-sexual context, and you're at the movies or something like that, and you lean over and whisper the trigger in her ears, right? And now she's like squirming, right? Because it just direct signal, because you spent the weeks, right? Because it does take time. It's not just like, oh, you listen to this once and the trigger's set. That's not how the subconscious works. That has to be dug in, right? Like carving a pathway into the subconscious. So it has to be done multiple times to the point where there is just a single word or a sound or even a visual cue, okay? It could be linked to like a playing card, right? The Jack of Clubs, and boom, her pussy's getting wet, or she has a desire to suck, right? And just automatically she's got this urge to get on her knees because she saw the Jack of Clubs. You can literally link anything you want, as long as you've got the right induction and repetition. And that's how it works. But so what I did is, instead of you learning hypnosis and going through the processes of dealing with that and stuff like and that shit, I created these files. So basically you're just like, okay, willing woman who's interested in this sort of erotic play, every night you're going to listen to this track, or you're going to listen to these 3 tracks, okay? Because there's some of them link together and they get deeper and more intense. So like the first track is like pretty easy. It's fairly easy going about obedience, right? And then it just gets heavier and heavier, like the I don't know, the pressure, I guess, or the verbal force used to get into the subconscious. It gets a little bit more intense as the tracks go on. And so you could say, all right, you're going to listen to the first one for a week, every single night. Then the following week, it's like the first and then the second, back to back for another week. And then the third week is the first, second, and third every night for a week, right? So you're adding layers to this sort of thing, okay? And then she's going to want to play with herself. She's going to want to have orgasms, okay? So then you set up a reward system, right? So let's say she follows perfectly to the T every single week. At the end of that week, she gets to have an orgasm, and it's going to feel fucking amazing, right? Because it's just built up. Like all week, she's not allowed to touch herself. She just has to listen. And at the end of the week, it's like, okay, go ahead. You can have an orgasm. And it's like, bang, it'll be like removing the fucking Hoover Dam, and tons of water just comes splashing through like a tidal wave, right? So you can do that. And now she knows, okay, a reward is coming. So at the end of the second week, she's like, ooh, I can't wait. It's fucking Saturday. Sunday's almost here, right? Sunday, boom, she gets that reward. Bang. Now you're setting up even more triggers. Now the bell with the thing, right? It's so following your commands and doing a good job now is as being associated with having orgasms, right? So again, my point, control your pleasure. Excuse me. Like it's really hard to get into this space of the tinkerer, right? The having like a mastermind sort of approach to things if you're easily moved by pleasure, right? Got to shift it. You know, all you got to do is just shift it up, right? I'm not saying remove it, but take the pleasure from your dick and bring it up into your head, right? Because this is a way stronger erogenous zone, way stronger. Like for men and women. The thing is, though, is that for men, we're not taught how to really tap into it. We're not really taught how to tap into our own psychological erogenous zone. And I think it's like, well, because I think just a lot of men are not knowledgeable how, right? So it's like, who's going to teach them? Yeah. And then we discover somewhere like, oh, that's a woman's erogenous zone, right? But if you have a mind, it has vastly more options and possibilities than just like genitals. You know what I'm saying? There's only so much you can do with genitals, but the mind has really no limitations, right? You can do so much. It's just like, well, what's your understanding of the subconscious and the conscious mind, how they interact, and what's the level of your creativity? Now that's what it comes down to. You can literally do fucking anything, you know. I was playing with this one girl. And it was from a distance, and so she was in Arizona. Yeah, she was somewhere in Arizona, and she liked. I mean, we met online. And she liked my attitude towards certain things. So there was a certain element of trust, and we had a fair bit of interaction that was non-sexual before that. And so I could tell there was some attraction, and she was just kind of like pacing herself, right? Just feeling me out, which is totally fine, right? I'm not, because I'm not lusting. I don't have lust when it comes to women. And so I let her come to me, and then we got to talking and things like that. And she made it known that she was willing to take commands. And I'm like, okay, cool. And it, of course, started her off nice and easy, right? Simple things. And then it wasn't enough, I could tell. Like, she was really like, no, give me something I can really chew on. And so that built up to the point where we were getting to sexual stuff. Again, at a distance, right? This was all through our phones. And she had this beautiful, long, straight, silky blonde hair. And she always wore it up in a ponytail. And so because she had to use ponytails all the time, she always kept those elastics around her wrist. You know, the ones that have their fabric all around, and then there's like that little metal bar that kind of binds them together. It's a little gold metal shank, right? And so she always had this around her wrist for whenever she had to put her hair up. And so I told her that, you know, we were getting into like dirty talk, and I was projecting ideas and drawing pictures in her mind and just really like engaging that before I started moving that into something a little bit more mechanical, right? Something actionable, something I could do with, like, because there's one thing about painting a picture in a woman's mind because it's arousing, but it's like, okay, now what are you going to do with it, right? So, I started stirring up that pot in her mind, right? Getting her aroused and getting her thinking about all sorts of crazy shit. And then I started transferring it. Okay. And I said, you know, that bracelet, or not bracelet, but the hair tie that's on your wrist. Every time you have a dirty thought, you're going to snap that against your wrist, right? Not too hard, but just enough where you know you can feel it pretty good. Okay. You don't want to cause damage. You don't want to bruise the skin, but I want you to do it hard enough such that you know what's happening. And she's like, yes, sir. Okay. And then, of course, I start just like carpet bombing her mind with all kinds of, I was sending her X-rated gifts. I was sending her photos. I was sending her voice notes. I was sending her all kinds of shit. Okay. Just all erotic stuff, getting into her head while she was at work, while she was, at the gym, at home, didn't matter. Okay. And of course, like, it was reaching fever pitch. And then I told her that she's not going to feel it on her wrist. Okay. And so I started getting in her head about that. And so basically every time she snapped the rubber band on her wrist, she would feel it on her clit. Right. And so that started happening. So now I've created this trigger between it's the verbal mind pictures, the snapping, and now she's no longer feeling the pain on her wrist. Her awareness has shifted to her clit, and she feels stimulation on her clit every time she snapped it. So now it's like my voice is going like through her wrist and into her clit without actually even touching her clit. Okay. And so I'm sitting there talking shit to her and sending her imagery, and she's snapping this thing like in the middle of her living room, and she's having an orgasm without anything touching her clit. And I don't know, it's fun, right? It's fun because I like this. I like getting in the mind, right? And it was fun for her because she enjoyed being on the receiving end of this. Okay, it's totally, well, I wouldn't say it's totally safe because I am playing with someone's psychology, but she came to it from a consensual and willing place. Like, she knew what she was getting into. But it's safe in the sense that, like, I'm nowhere near her, right? So, her heart is safe. She's not like falling in love with me. We're not fucking. I'm not putting my hands on her in any way. Okay. And actually no hands are being put on her, but that's I guess that's the fun part. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. Very interesting thing that we were doing there. But yeah, that's one example. But the question about how I got into BDSM, that's a good question. I don't really remember how I got into BDSM, but I do remember a long time ago when I first smacked and choked a girl, and I was like, that's me. Like I don't know. It's kind of like if you've ever like played a sport or you've tried many different sports, but then you land on one particular sport and you're like, yeah, this is me. Like this makes sense to me. Right? You played football, you played basketball, you've played lacrosse. Like none of them made any sense, right? Until you played soccer. You're like, I get it. And soccer gets me, right? It just makes sense. It was like that. It just made sense to me. And but then I didn't delve for a while. Like I just, I don't know. I had these moments during sex, and then I didn't really think anything of it. And it wasn't until later years where I was doing more, but not really realizing what I was doing. Right. And then I don't know, I came across some information which caused me to do research. And so I started reading books. I started getting in touch with other DOMs, started, just picking their minds and to get a greater understanding of like what I was. That's what I wanted to do. Right. I wasn't really into like, oh, well, what do I do? It wasn't a do thing. It was an am thing. Like, what am I? You know? And I met some really interesting people. Some were just outright crazy, and some were extremely knowledgeable, and some were not knowledgeable at all, but liked to position themselves that they were knowledgeable. And that happens in every outlet of hobby or skill or profession everywhere across the world. There's always posers who want to show you that they know more than they do. So yeah, I just started digging and digging and experimenting more and writing, understanding myself. And the more I understood myself, the more free I felt. It was almost like, like peeling off layers of the onion. And I'm like, I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't need this. And just started coming into a greater understanding of who I was by research, so bringing in information, but then also letting go of certain aspects of myself that I thought I had to have because that's just what I've always done or what I've always believed myself to be. And, things I learned from childhood or religion coming up or school or parents or what have you, right? So it was just a letting go while also delving deep into certain types of information around BDSM. I met some very interesting submissives that taught me a lot about myself without them actually directly teaching me something, like sitting me down and go, hey, Justin, all right, this is something you need to know. It was something that, and I don't know if they were conscious or not. I don't know. But I learned a lot of interesting lessons about myself. And that's why I think this is, one of the many pathways to truth of self, right? There's many pathways to truth of self. And this is another one. It's a very, very interesting one because it also involves, personal psychology. I don't know if religion does that. I'd have to talk to somebody more who's in, deep in religion. If going deep into your studies will address certain psychological problems, right? Will it help you deal with hangups about your parents or lovers or trauma or something along those lines, right? Does it take you through certain pathways so that you can let go of these things? I don't know, but I found that the pathways through BDSM absolutely do, right? Because in order to operate in it, there has to be a certain level of clarity with yourself. Like in order to do it right, you have to have clarity and honesty with yourself. And it just won't work if you're if you're deluding yourself, if you're trying to pretend, right? And it's just the same shit with game. Like it's like all the things that I hear, some of my associates talk about with regard to game. A lot of it's the same. It's like you can't cheat the game. You can't lie about the game. You can't pretend that you have something you don't have and actually make things work in your life, right? Like you can't pretend to be a good dom and know about the physical and the non-physical things involved in BDSM and have things actually move forward well. Like you might be able to fool somebody just like you can fool a woman into thinking you got game, right? And then she spends a little bit of time with you and she'll realize eventually at some point that you're a moron and that you're a liar, okay? The thing is that with BDSM, you can do the same thing, but you might find yourself in something that is a lot more compromising than her getting annoyed, okay? Or her getting frustrated or even angry with you. It could be something that's physically dangerous to her. It could be something that's emotionally dangerous to her or psychologically dangerous to her, right? Now you're causing damage, not just annoyance, right? You're now causing damage to someone or potentially, right? So that's why it's important to really have a willingness to be honest, right? Like one of the best things you can do when coming into BDSM, say you meet a play partner, right? Not a girlfriend, but I'm saying a play partner. Say you go to like a dungeon or a munch. Munches are, if you don't know, munches are public events for like small gatherings rather, but they're out in public. They're not like at a dungeon or anything like that. They're at a bar or restaurant, and people in lifestyle get together to just meet and greet, right? Maybe network, schmooze, get to know each other in like a non-play context, okay? And you might meet somebody that you get along with, and they have similar kink as you and similar interests, and like you vibe on just like a regular personal level. And it's like, okay, now this person become a play partner, okay? The best thing to do is to have honesty. Like if you're kind of green, if you're a little wet behind the ears, don't try to pretend that you're not, right? Just say, hey, listen, I got to be honest with you that I very much would like to play with you, but I'm not very experienced. I don't know a whole lot, and I don't want to, get it over my head, okay? And if they're experienced, which hopefully they are, then you guys can sit down and have a chat first. And a lot of times, play partners will sit down and have a chat first, regardless of how much experience, because you need to know certain things. You got to kind of see if you're online with certain things, interests, limitations, boundaries, all sorts of things, mindset going in, there's a whole host of things, but it's during that time where you should be honest, right? Don't don't try to come into situations trying to be not Dorian Gray, but Christian Grey, right? Like here's this dude who like knows everything, okay? And the thing is though, is that you will never know everything. Never, ever, ever, right? You will always, like if you keep at it, you keep studying, you keep learning about yourself, you keep experimenting, you're going to learn more about yourself, and it's limitless. It's absolutely limitless. I wouldn't change it for anything. It was one of the best things that's ever happened to me / chose to do. Another good question here. Understanding a woman's mind. I appreciate you answering these questions. Yeah, no problem. Why would you want to understand a woman's mind? You don't really have to. It's more important it would be better if you wrote the question, understanding my mind. That's far more valuable than understanding a woman's mind. And here's the thing. The more you rest in your own mind and understand your minds, the more clarity you have about other people's minds. That's, yes, even the sexual mind. Even the sexual mind. I mean, yes, there's certain things, that you can learn, but it's far, far better to understand yourself. And so the deeper you understand yourself, the easier you can understand other people. It becomes clear as day because our experiences like of the human condition, right? It's between us. It's not like vastly different from person to person, right? This is why that when you know yourself, you like I think there's like an old like Buddhist thing that says like once you know yourself, you know the world. And because we're all basically going through similar human experiences, okay? And that gives you clarity. You can see better what's going on, all right? Well, nothing new under the sun is a different thing, but it's just, everyone's experiencing the same life. We're all humans, right? There's many details that are different, but how we process them, right? It's different. And we all have our basic needs are the same, But anyways, but you said sexual mind. Sexual mind, yes. Women, generally speaking, they want to be taken. They want to be devoured. Okay? But it's hard to describe. It's not as simple as that. Okay? It has to be devoured in a certain kind of way from the certain kind of man with a certain kind of mindset, with a certain kind of spirit about him. If there's neediness inside him, it ruins it. If there's a desire to control, it ruins it. If he has fear, it ruins it. If he's trying too hard, it ruins it. Like it has to be this natural thing. And that's why it's so important to know yourself more, right? Because it flushes out all that bullshit that's going to fuck up how you interact with women, right? That's why, like when guys work with me, we don't get into like all this like cool shit. We don't, eventually we do, but we don't get into the cool shit. We don't get into the fucking mind control. We don't get into the fun shit to do in the bedroom. We don't get into like, head games and driving the passion inside her mind and all sorts of shit like that. Like maybe we'll kind of dabble a little bit along the way if situations come up and I'm like, hey, try this, say this, do this, okay? But the vast majority of the training has to do with getting rid of bullshit, right? Because if you don't, anything that you put in won't stick, right? It's like trying to fucking like put Teflon or sticking things to Teflon. It's just not going to work, right? So, so you have to release that crap that's in there first, right? The fear, the anxiety, the wrongful attachments, the need to control, right? The wanting to devour for selfish reasons. Okay? There's a lot. But once you get through it, that means that you can come at things from a much more holistic angle, right? You can see more clearly because you don't have a whole bunch of bullshit in front of your eyes, right? I'm just like grabbing some fun images. Man, I found this, what is it? I found this this AI art generator. I'll put this in the chat. So I have been an artist my whole life, and And so I like fantasy and science fiction art. And so I got really excited when Chat GPT, or no, sorry, not Chat GPT, Midjourney started up. Okay. And Midjourney was pretty good. And when it first started, it didn't have very many restrictions. So you could do all kinds of NSFW stuff. You could make really gory images, blood and broken bones, and all kinds of like crazy cool shit. So, but then as time went on with Midjourney, and it's fantastic. Like its ability, it's just clarity and depth, just everything about it's just really, really cool. But they put a lot of restrictions on it. So no NSFW stuff, and no gore, no blood, no, no graphic stuff at all. And so that sucks. But if you want to get through that stuff, you can use like unstable diffusion, and I don't know. It's like coding shit. A lot of these like nerds on Reddit know how to do this stuff, but it's a little bit beyond me. But I found this one. It's pretty good. Okay, it's called AI Ease, and it can make somewhat NSFW imagery. Okay, like occasionally it'll accidentally create something with an exposed nipple, right? Or genitals or something like that. But yeah, I had this one, I saved it. I was like, holy crap, it fucked up. Probably so small that YouTube won't can me for it. But yeah, it's in the top right of the screen here. And so the prompt was, having a woman on her knees wearing a dog collar, with a man standing in front of her holding a leash, or a man in a suit standing in front of her holding a leash, and it made her without clothes. I didn't say naked, right? And her breasts are fully exposed, and it's a great image. And just unfortunately, I can't show it anywhere. But it's probably small enough where YouTube won't get upset. But yeah, it's a fun app, and I like it a lot. Like I wish I could do like a little screen in the top right here and just have images flip through. Like all this is like AI art, and it's getting so good, so good. And once like the outputs can match the inputs, man, that's when it's really gonna fly, right? Because you can put in all kinds of inputs, right? Like do this and make it look like this and whatever. Even with the video, like AI video shit is amazing. Like it's crazy what it can do. Now, when it can start responding, okay, that's when it's going to get interesting, okay? Because I was doing some research, found these AI Instagram accounts, and there's just these AI bots, right? They're imagery with millions of followers. I'm talking like 2 million followers, and the followers know that it's AI. Right? It's not like trying to fake anybody out. That like right there in the description, it says like, I'm a bot, like I'm AI, and there's like Christmas imagery. Like the girl's cute. She's wearing a sweater. It's got like, gingerbread man on the front, and the tree is behind her. She's like, Merry Christmas, right? And literally guys in the comments are wishing her a Merry Christmas. She's never going to read it, But here's the thing. The technology is going to develop to the point where there is response, okay? Because it's already starting with things like apps like Replica, all right? So, and then the video is going to catch up, right? So all this shit is going to converge, okay? So to the point where guys can have like this virtual girlfriend, say like through the Replica app, right, where she's learning your mind, so that she's learning to interact with you on a more profound, more intimate level, okay? And she's fucking perfect specifically for you, all right? Now, the visuals on Replica aren't that great. They're kind of clunky, right? Compared to like, what AI art can do now, all right? But this is going to change. This is going to this is going to change to match up, right? And so the it's all going to kind of converge. And what's going to happen then is there's going to be girls like these AI bot girls. They're going to have OnlyFans, and they're going to have their own channels, like just generating tons of money, and they never sleep, they never eat. They don't go to a different job. They don't visit family. They don't have boyfriends. They don't have anything except just being there on screen. And they can do fucking anything and rake in tons of cash, right? And of course, that's just going to extend into personal use, right? Because guys are getting increasingly more, what's the word? Like they're I think guys are just losing faith in the whole like getting with women thing. Like they have the impulse, like, yes, I want to be with a woman, I want to touch her, I want to feel her, I want to fuck her, I want to smell her, all that great shit. Okay, because there's literally programmed in your DNA to want to do that. Okay, but they socially look at it and be like, that's not worth the trouble. Like I have really, Mr. Justin, I have to change shit about myself and go through layers of hard work that could take years before I'm like, good enough to handle women properly such that things are smooth and pleasant for everyone involved. Really? I don't want to do that. I want what I want right now. And so they're going to say, well, I could either do that shit with Mr. Justin for months or perhaps years, depending on how fucked up I am, or I can get a $29.99 subscription to this AI video girl, right, who is mine, and I can customize her look, I can customize her personality, I can customize everything about her. The only problem is I can't touch her, right? There's nothing to touch, right? But she's there for me on an emotional level. And I think that's going to become even more important because increasingly guys are feeling more and more invisible, more and more worthless. And yes, as much as they want sex, I think what's growing even more is just recognition of existence. That someone sees them and appreciates them on a daily basis and says, hey, how are you doing today? Right? And really genuinely inquiring about their well-being. I think that's becoming a greater need than just fucking. Okay? I think they're just like, you know what? All this like fucking shit, it's too complicated. It's all fucked up. The market is screwed. Fuck it. Right? And so maybe when they're horny or whatever, they'll just like, get an escort or something. But all that other stuff, the intimacy and the recognition, the validation and all that stuff, the things that they're really after, all right, that's going to be supplied through virtual girlfriends. And there's like hundreds of these apps, right? They're blowing up in the East, blowing the fuck up, right? I think Replica has 10 million users at this point. 10 million people have a virtual girlfriend through this app. And it's just going to get more and more and more sophisticated, right? Just like if you saw the new Blade Runner movie. Well, it's not new, but the second Blade Runner movie. Joy, right? That was her name. Joi. Like that's, or that movie She, right? Maybe I'll watch that after this. But anyways. Oh. Yeah. But yeah, I'm gonna watch that shit. She. But anyways, that's the future, man. Like that's where shit is going. Like I think a lot of young guys, they'll look at that shit, they look at the market, they look at how difficult women are, how entitled they are, and what it takes to like get to her feminine core. Right? Both on her end and yours, or on theirs. And they're just like, you know what? Fuck it. Fuck this shit. I'll have the virtual girl, and then when I want to get laid, I'll spend a few $100 and have an escort. That's what I'm going to do. And then their kids will have, the robots, because that the mechanical side of things will take quite a while to develop. So it's smooth. How to profit from the AI? Corn? Easy. You just start a page, right? The trick is to be able to create the same girl with the same features in every image. Okay, and there is a way to do that, but it takes some knowing how to talk to the prompts, right? Like how to create the right prompts. But the information's out there. Absolutely. Just look up like how to create, virtual girlfriend for profit or whatever. And you can create your own Instagram page and then have links to something like probably OnlyFans, because I think OnlyFans can do photos as well. It doesn't have to be video, but you can make audio tracks of her talking, right? By using that 11 Labs that I linked in the chat. Right? So you can have her saying shit and you can choose whatever fucking voice you want. There's like 1,000 different voices on there. And you can modulate the voices to change them. Right? And so you can, do on the front line to get more exposure. You use the Instagram and it's all, safe for work imagery. Right? But it's like this hot chick and whatever. And then there's like you create like lead magnets with certain posts and things like that, bringing them to the link. The link takes them to OnlyFans, and the OnlyFans has the the X-rated imagery and the X-rated audio tracks, right? And there are some video, all right, that I think what's Adobe's, but I don't think Adobe can make it X-rated. But there's this new Adobe thing. What's it called? Like Firebird or what is it called? Firefly, Adobe Firefly. And I think that can generate video, but don't quote me on that. But yeah. Anyways, yeah, this was a fun little chat. So yeah, it was good to just talk and not have much of a direction, But I think most of my talks don't have a great direction anyways. Yeah, I was going to talk about like how to, what was it? How to fucking deal with simp syndrome. Oh, how to rid oneself of simp behavior. Yeah, I was going to talk about that. But it's like if you're a simp, if you're a simp, you know you're a simp. You got work to do. You got to fucking you got work to do. Stop being an asshole to yourself. Like that's really what it is. That's really what being a simp is being an asshole to yourself, right? Learn some self-love, self-respect. You'll be all right. It just grows from there. But cool. All right. Well, I'm gonna sign off here. Appreciate you guys coming through on this nice Saturday evening, and I'm gonna relax, play some Call of Duty, and find some more ambient tracks because I've really enjoyed talking over ambient music. I like it a lot. Keeps everybody chill, right? Yes. Cool. All right, and for those of you watching on the replay, thank you for watching as well. If you have any questions, get in touch with me via the links in the description of the video. Go to the website, thedominancecademy.com, and on there's call packages, there's hypnosis shit, there's a BDSM starter kit that I just created. It's got videos and documents and how to really get things started. Training modules, things of that nature. And, if you just have any questions, just find me on Instagram at thedominance.academy, and we can have a chat there. Or you can set up a phone call. All the calls are free for the first one. All right, guys, until next time, take it easy. I am out of here.